Welcome. If you are here, you are probably ready to stop. Stop thinking about what happened today. Stop planning what needs to happen tomorrow. Stop the quiet running list in the back of your mind that never quite switches off on its own. This is what this is for. This is eyes closed, a place where we slow everything down together with stories, not dramatic stories, not stories that ask anything of you, just long, gentle, interesting stories about ordinary things, the kind of knowledge that is good to have, told in the kind of voice that is good to fall asleep to. Every episode, I'll take something from everyday life, something you have used or touched or walked past without thinking about it. And I will tell you its whole story, where it came from, how it was made, the people and accidents and centuries that have brought it to you. Your brain will follow along just enough to feel gently occupied. And then, somewhere in the middle of the story, without deciding to, you will drift. That is the idea. So here is what I would like you to do right now. Find your position, the one you actually sleep in, not the polite sitting up position, but the real one. Pull the blanket up if you have one. Let your shoulders drop away from your ears. Unclench your jaw if it was clenched. It usually is. Take one slow breath in through your nose and let it out slowly through your mouth. You don't need to do anything with your hands. Just let them rest. You don't need to keep your eyes open. Let them close when they want to. You are not going to miss anything important. The story will keep going. I will keep talking. All you have to do is listen, or not listen, or somewhere in between, which is the best place to be. Tonight's story is about seeds. It is longer than you might expect. It goes further back than you might think. And by the end of it, if you make it that far, you will know something you did not know before, about something you have probably never thought twice about. But first, just breathe. Let the day go. It was what it was. Tomorrow is not here yet. Right now, there is only this, your breath, and a story that is about to begin. Are you ready? Then let's begin. A seed is a waiting thing. Inside every seed, inside the hard core, the shell, the pod, the husk, whatever protective layer the plant has wrapped around it, is a complete plant in miniature. The embryo, root tip, stem tip, the first folded leaves, all formed, all present, all ready. Packed around the embryo is a store of food, starch and oil and protein, enough to fuel the first moments of growth, the first push of the root into the soil, and the first unfurling of leaves towards light, before the plant can begin making its own food through photosynthesis. And surrounding all of this, holding it safe, is a seed coat, the testa, hard or soft, smooth or rigid, winged or spined or hooked or feathered in 1,000-fold, shaped by millions of years of evolutions towards one purpose, protecting the embryo, keeping it intact, keeping it waiting. A seed can wait. Some seeds can wait for years, decades, in exceptional cases, for centuries. Seeds of the sacred lotus, Ilumbo nucifera, have been germinated after lying dormant in ancient lake sediments for over 1,000 years. The embryo, sealed inside its hard core, suspended in metabolic stillness, surviving while kingdoms rose and fell above it. Seeds recover from the frozen burrows of ancient Arctic squirrels in Siberia. Seeds of Silene stepholifilia, a flowering plant, were successfully germinated after 32,000 years in the permafrost. The oldest successfully revived seed ever recorded. 32,000 years of waiting, and then given warmth and water, growth. The oldest successfully germinated seed on record from a named species come from Masada, the ancient fortress in Israel. The date palm seed, recovered from an archaeological excavation, preserved for 2,000 years in the dry desert there. Planted by a researcher in 2005, it germinated, it grew. The researchers named it Methuselah, after the biblical figure said to have lived 969 years. A seed can hold the pattern of a living thing across centuries, waiting in patience that no human patience can match, waiting without effort, waiting without impatience, simply waiting, complete and intact, for conditions that may or may not arrive. There is something in this worth sitting with tonight. Let us go inside the seed. The seed coat, the outermost layer, is primarily of dead cells, compressed and hardened into a protective shell. In some seeds, it is paper thin and easily broken. In others, the coconut, the walnut, the hard seeds of many legumes, it is dense and almost impenetrable, requiring saccharification before water can enter and germinate can begin. Scarification is a process of breaking or weakening the seed coat. In nature, this happens mechanically. The seed passing through the digestive tract of an animal, the coat abrated by stomach acids. It happens chemically. The seed resting in acidic soil, the coat slowly dissolved. It happens through fire, the heat crackling the coat and releasing the seed inside. And it happens through freezing and thawing, the water inside the coat expanding as it freezes, crackling the shell from within. The seed does not choose when to germinate. It waits for a specific signal from the environment that indicate conditions are right for survival. Temperature is one signal. Most seeds require minimum temperature before they will germinate, ensuring they do not begin growing in the middle of winter. Water is another. The entry of water into the seed triggers the biochemical cascade of germination. Light is a signal for some seeds. The seeds of many plants that grow in open disturbed grounds, weeds, pioneer species, require light to germinate. They can lie dormant in soil for years, even decades, and will only germinate when the soil is disturbed and they are brought to the surface where light can reach them. This is why weeding can seem counterproductive. Digging the soil brings dormant weed seeds into the light and triggers their germination. The seeds of plants that grows in shade, by contrast, are often inhibited by light. They germinate better in darkness, the darkness of deep soil, signaling that they are in a place suitable for shade-tolerant growth. Each seed carries its own set of requirements, evolved over millions of years to match the specific conditions of its ecological niche. The seed knows, in the only sense that matters, the biochemical sense, where and when it should grow. Inside the coat, the endosperm, the food store, is packed densely around the embryo. The endosperm of a wheat grain is what we mill into flour. The endosperm of a coconut is the white flesh inside. The endosperm of a corn kernel is what we eat as corn. The endosperm of a coffee bean is what we roast and grind for coffee. The food that the seed stored for its own embryo has become, in thousands of plant species, the primary food of the human world. We live to a remarkable degree on seed endosperm. The seed is relatively recent evolutionary invention in geological terms. The earliest land plants, which colonized the land from the sea around 470 million years ago, reproduced by spores. A spore is a single cell released into the wind, which can develop into a new plant if it lands in suitable conditions. Ferns, mosses, and horsetails still reproduce this way. Spores are simple and numerous. A single fern can release millions of spores in a season, but each spore is tiny with minimal food reserves, and most die before finding suitable conditions. The strategy is quantity over quality. Around 360 million years ago, a different reproductive strategy began to emerge in some plant lineages. Instead of releasing spores directly, these plants began retaining the fertilized egg with the parent plant, supplying it with food from the parent's resources, and enclosing it in a protective coat before releasing it. The seed is quantity traded for quality, fewer propagulists, but each one much better supplied, much better protected, much more capable of surviving the hazards of disposal and the weight of suitable conditions. The earliest seed plants were gymnosperms, the naked seed plant, conifers, cycad, ginkgos. Their seeds are exposed to the surface of a cone or similar structure, not enclosed within a fruit. The ginkgo tree, sometimes called a living fossil, essentially unchanged in its basic form for over 200 million years, still produce its seed this way. The angiosperms, the flowering plants, evolved around 140 million years ago. They went further than the gymnosperms, enclosing the seed within a fruit, a structure that not only protected the seed but actively attracted animals to disperse it. The fruit is the plant's investment in transport. It grows, it ripens, it becomes colorful and sweet and fragrant, advertising itself to animals whose eyes can detect the color of ripeness, whose nose can detect the violets that signal sweetness. The animal eats the fruit. The seed passes through the digestive tract, protected by its hard coat, and is deposited somewhere new, wrapped in a package of fertilizer. The flowering plant and the animal partners, the birds and mammals and insects that eat fruits and disperse their seeds, co-evolved in a relationship of mutual benefit that has shaped the living world. Most of the plant life you see around you is flowering plants. Most of the color in a landscape, the flowers, the fruits, the autumn leaves, is the flowering plant advertising to its animal partners. The apple you eat, the mango, the berry, the tomato, the pepper, all of them fruits in the botanical sense, structured built by the plant to carry and disperse seeds made delicious in the long negotiation between plant and animal that evolution has conducted over 100 million years. A seed needs to live. If it falls directly beneath the parent plant, it must compete with that plant for light, for water, for the nutrients in the soil. A seedling germinating in the shadow of its parents is at a severe disadvantage. The further the seed travels from the parent, the better its chances of finding uncrowded ground, different soil, new opportunities. Plants have evolved an extraordinary variety of mechanisms for moving their seeds. Wind dispersal is perhaps the most familiar. The dandelion club, that wide sphere of seeds you may have blown as a child, scattering the pale parachutes into the air, is one of the most elegant wind dispersal mechanisms in the world. Each seed is attached to a feathery structure called a pappus, a ring of fine hairs that acts as a parachute, slowing the seed's fall and allowing it to drift in the lightest air current. Studies of dandelion seed dispersal using high-speed photography have revealed that the pappus generates a ring-shaped vortex of air as it moves, the toroidal vortex, the same fluid dynamic phenomenon as a smoke ring that dramatically increases its aerodynamic drag and extends its flight time. The dandelion seed is not simply a passive parachute. It is an aerodynamic structure with surprising sophistication, evolved to attract maximum lift from minimum airflow. A single dandelion plant can release several thousand seeds in a season. Each seed, in favorable conditions, can travel hundreds of meters from the parent plant. In strong winds, kilometers. The maple key, the paired winged seeds of the maple tree that fall spinning from the branches in autumn, uses a completely different aerodynamic principle. The wing of the maple key is shaped so that as the seed falls, it auto-rotates, spins around a vertical axis like a helicopter blade. This auto-rotation slows the fall dramatically and allows the wind to carry the seed sideways. The principle is identical to that of a helicopter rotor. Engineers studying the aerodynamics of maple keys have applied their findings to design of small rotating wing aircraft and to drug delivery devices. Tiny auto-rotating capsules that can be released from height and drift into a precise landing point. The coconut floats, the thick fibrous husk of the coconut, the brown hairy outer layer that surrounds the hard shell, is buoyant and waterproof. A coconut can float in seawater for months without the embryo inside being damaged. Ocean currents carry coconuts across enormous distances, coconut palm lines beaches throughout the tropical world, because the ocean has been distributing their seeds for millions of years. The burr, the spiky, hooked seed case that attaches itself to the fur of animals or the fabric of clothing, is a hitchhiker. The hooks of a burr are curved at their tips, designed to catch in the loops of fur or fiber that holds fast until the animal grooms or the walker brushes them off, somewhere distant from the parent plant. And as we mentioned in the shorter version of the story, the burr inspired Velcro. Georges de Menchel, a Swiss engineer who returned from a hike in 1941. The burrs attached to his clothing and his dog fur. Examined them under a microscope. He saw the hook and loop mechanism, tiny hooks catching in loops of fiber, and spent years developing synthetic version, Velcro, from the French velours, velvet, and crochet hook, the most widely used fastening system in the world, from the cockpit of the space shuttle to the shoes of toddlers, derived directly from a plant solution to the problem of seed dispersal. Some plants shoot their seeds. The squinting cucumber, Ecabalium elaterium, builds the hydraulic pressure inside its fruit as it ripens until the fruit detaches from its stem and squirts a jet of seeds and mucilage several meters from the plant. The sandbox tree, Ura sepitans, had a fruit that explodes when ripe, launching seeds at speeds of up to 70 meters per second, roughly the speed of a highway car. The distance of up to 40 meters. The explosion is audible. The tree is sometimes called the dynamite tree. Witch hazel, when its seed capsules dry and contract, build tension until the capsule snaps open and catapults the seeds up to 10 meters. Every one of these mechanisms is a product of millions of years of natural selection. Plants that disperse their seeds more effectively left more offspring, whose genes carried the dispersal mechanism forward. The parachute and the autorotor and the hook and the catapult are all solutions found independently by different plant lineages to the same problem of getting the seed away from the parent. When the conditions are finally right, when the temperature is warm enough and the water has entered the seed coat and the chemical signals that indicate the right season have been received, the seed awakes. Germination begins with the uptake of water. The seed swells as water enters through small pores in the coat. Enzymes, protein catalyzed, that have been dormant in the dry seed, held in place by the absence of the water they needed to function. become active. These enzymes begin breaking down the food stored in the endosperm. Starch is converted to sugar. Protein is broken down into amino acids. Oil is converted into usable energy. The embryo begins to grow, fueled by these reserves. The radicle, the embryonic root, emerges first. It pushes downward, following gravity with absolute fidelity. In a response called gravitropism, no matter how the seed is oriented, the radicle grows down. Plant the seed upside down, sideways, at any angle, and the radicle will still find its way down into the soil. Cells on the upper side of the radicle grows faster than cells on the lower side, bending the root tip downward. The mechanism of gravitropism involves tiny starch grains inside specialized cells at the root tip, satellite. These starch grains are dense enough to sink under gravity as the root tip moves. The satellites shift to the lowest part of the cell, and the cell interprets this shift as a signal about the direction of gravity, triggering the differential growth that bends the root downwards. The root knows which way is down because tiny grains of starch tell it so. As the radicle grows, it develops root hairs, fine extensions of individual cells that dramatically increases the surface area of the root in contact with the soil. Each root hair grows into the spaces between soil particles, absorbing water and dissolved minerals. A single rye plant has been measured to have over 14 billion root hairs, with a total surface area of several hundred square meters. While the root is growing down, the shoot emerges and grows upwards. The mechanism of phototropism, growing towards the light, bends the shoot towards the light source in the same way that gravity-sensing statholids guide the root, light-sensing pigments guide the shoot. The first leaves to emerge, the seed leaves, or cotyledons, are usually different from the mature leaves the plant will eventually produce. In many plants, they are simply rounded structures, often folded inside the seed, that unfolds as they emerge into the air. They may or may not be capable of photosynthesis. Their primary role is often to absorb and transfer the remaining food reserves from the endosperm to the growing seedling. In a bean, which is a large seed, easy to observe, you can watch all of this with a jar and some damp paper. The bean swells. The radicle emerges from one end, curves downwards. The shoot emerges from the other, arches upwards. The cotyledons enclosing the first true leaves inside the curve. The arch straightens as it clears the soil surface. the cotyledons opens, the first true leaves unfold. From dormancy to photosynthesizing seedlings in a week. The agricultural history of humanity is a story of saving seeds. For 10,000 years, farmers saved seeds from their best plants to sow the following season. This was the mechanism of crop improvement, selecting year after year the plants that yielded most, or resisted disease best, or tasted best, or matured earliest, and saving their seeds. This is how wild acorn glass became modern wheat, how the small, bitter fruits of the wild tomato became the large, sweet varieties we know today. How every crop plant we eat was transformed from its wild ancestor into something a human civilization could be built on. This 10,000-year process created an enormous diversity of crop varieties. Different regions, different climates, different farming tradition produce different varieties of the same crops. Thousands of varieties of rice adapted to wet paddies or dry hillsides, to short growing seasons or long ones, to different taste and cooking qualities. Thousands of varieties of wheat, hundreds of varieties of beans and potatoes and maize. The diversity is a biological resource of incalculable value. It represents 10,000 years of accumulated genetic adaptation. Genes that may confer disease resistance, drought tolerance, salt tolerance, unusual nutritional profiles, or traits we have not yet thought to look for. In the 20th century, as industrial agriculture replaced traditional farming in much of the world, this diversity began to disappear. Farmers who had grown dozens of local varieties for generations switched to a small number of high-yielding commercial varieties. Their local varieties, no longer planted, were lost. The seeds dry out, or rotted, or simply never saved again. This is the genetic erosion of agricultural diversity, one of the least visible and most consequential forms of extinction happening in the modern world. In response, seed banks was established. Collections of seeds, carefully dried and frozen, preserving the genetic diversity of crop plants against the possibility of future need. The Svalbard Global Seed Vault, built into the side of a sandstone mountain on the Norwegian archipelago of Svalbard, deep inside the Arctic Circle, is the largest and most secure of these collections. The vault was designed to last as long as the seeds needed to. The entrance tunnel pours through the permafrost into the mountain. The storage chambers, cut from rock, are kept at minus 18 degrees Celsius, cold enough to preserve seeds for hundreds or thousands of years. Even if the refrigeration system failed, the permafrost of the mountain would keep the seeds frozen for centuries. The vault holds over 1.3 million seed samples from almost every country in the world. Each sample is a sealed aluminum foil packet containing enough seeds to replant a crop if a variety is lost somewhere. The collections of individual countries are deposited in the vault as backup, a safety copy held in trust by Norway on behalf of humanity. The Syrian civil war led to the first withdrawal from the vault in 2015. The International Center for Agricultural Research in the dry areas based in Aleppo had lost access to its own collection as the war destroyed the city. They withdrew their seeds from Salvar to establish the collection in Morocco and Lebanon. The vault was used in exactly the way it was designed to be used. A war happened. A seed collection was lost. The backup copy preserved the genetic diversity that would have otherwise been gone. Seeds of the food that feeds the world, sleeping in a mountain in the Arctic, waiting, always waiting. Let us walk through the seeds on a kitchen shelf. Rice. Each grain of rice is a seed. The seed of Oryza sativia, the Asian rice plant, or Oryza glaberrima, the African rice. The grain you see has been milled, the outer husk and the bran layer removed, leaving the white endosperm. Brown rice retains the bran layer, which is why it has different texture and a higher nutritional value. The white rice grain is almost entirely endosperm. The food store the plant laid down for its embryo. Rice feeds more people than any other crop. More than half the world's population depends on rice as a primary food source. The crop has been cultivated for at least 9,000 years, beginning in the Yangtze River Valley in China. From there, it spread across Asia, the Middle East, and eventually the world. Coffee. A coffee bean is a seed. The seed of the coffee plant, Coffea arabica or Coffea canephora. Inside the bright red fruit of a coffee plant, the coffee cherries are usually two seeds facing each other, flattened on the facing seeds. These seeds are removed from the fruit, processed to remove the remaining fruit pulp, dried, and then roasted. The roasting is a chemical transformation. The green seed, containing hundreds of compound, is heated until it turns brown, and a complex cascade of chemical reaction produces the thousands of volatile compounds They give roasted coffee its characteristic smell and flavor. You begin your morning in many parts of the world by extracting flavor compounds from a roasted seed with hot water. Mustard. The mustard seeds in a jar in your spice cupboards are the seeds of the mustard plant. Ground mustard seeds mixed with water produces the condiment. The enzyme myrosinase released when the seed tissue is damaged, reacting with glycosinolates to produce the pungent compounds that give mustard its heat. Sesame, one of the oldest condiment plants known. Sesame seeds have been found at archaeological sites in India and the Middle East dating back 5,000 years. The phrase "open sesame" from a story of Ali Baba and the 40 Thieves may derive from the sound of a ripe sesame seed pod bursting open. A small sharp crack as the dried pod splits along its seams and scatters seeds. A kitchen shelf is a seed library, a collection of dormant potential, each container holding the reproductive structures of a specific plant lineage, shaped by millions of years of evolutions and thousands of years of human cultivation. The seed has accumulated a rich vocabulary around it in human language. We seed a field. We seed a tournament, placing the best competitors apart so they meet only in later rounds, giving the strongest seeds the best chance to grow through. We seed clouds, introducing particles into clouds to encourage rain. We plant seeds of doubt. We plant seeds of an idea, suggesting something small that might grow, given time and the right conditions. A seedling is a young, vulnerable thing in any context. Seed money is the initial funding that allows something larger to grow. A seedling is a beginning. The metaphor of the seed is so fundamental to human thought that it has spread into every domain of languages where growth and potential are discussed. Businesses, politics, education, personal relationships. In all of them, the seed appears as an image of beginning, of potential held patient until its moment arrives. The reason the metaphor is so powerful is that the seed captures something true about how many things in life work, not the sudden arrival of something fully formed, not continuous visible progress, but the quiet period of holding, the invisible work that precedes emergence, the patience before the growth. Many important things begins as seeds, as small, unpromising, externally unremarkable things that contains inside them something that will eventually change everything. The embryo, the food store, the protective coat, the capacity to wait. Let us return to the question of time. The seed that waited 32,000 years in the Siberian permafrost. The date palm that waited 2,000 years in the dry air of Masada. The lotus seed that waited 1,000 years in lake sediments. How is this possible? The key is the reduction of metabolic activity to nearly zero. An actively living cell is a busy place. Enzymes are working, membranes are pumping ions, DNA is being read, and proteins are being made. All of these activities requires energy, and all of it produces chemical byproducts that can damage cellular components over time. A dormant seed is almost completely still. The water content is reduced to as little as 5 to 8%, far too low for most biochemical reactions to proceed. The temperature in a cold seed vault or in frozen ground slows even the remaining chemical activity to near zero. In this state, the seed is not quite alive and not quite dead. It exists in a third state, suspended, waiting, metabolically nearly silent. Some seeds have evolved proteins that specifically protect cellular structures during dormancy. Late embryogenesis abundant proteins, LEA proteins, accumulate in seeds as they dry, forming a glassy matrix around cellular components that protects them from the physical stresses of desiccation. Other protective molecules prevent the oxidative damage that would otherwise accumulate in dormant tissue over time. The result of all these protective mechanisms is a structure of remarkable stability. A seed is, in a sense, a biological time capsule. Its contents, the embryo, the food store, the genetic information encoded in the DNA, can be preserved with extraordinary fidelity across timescales that are incomprehensible in terms of human experience. 32,000 years. While that seed waited in the Siberian permafrost, human beings painted the caves of Lascaux and Altamira. The last mammoths walked the earth. The ice sheets of the last glacial maximum advanced and retreated. Agriculture was invented. Writing was invented. Every civilization in human history rose and fell, and in the frozen ground the seed waited. Then someone planted it, and it grew. You are something like a seed tonight, not in the poetic sense, though that too, if you want it, in the sense of specific comparison. A seed in dormancy is not failing to grow. It is not stuck. It is not broken. It is doing exactly what it needs to, given the current conditions, holding its potential in reserve, maintaining its integrity, waiting for the circumstances that will allow it to become what it already visibly is. A seed does not struggle against its dormancy. It does not attempt to germinate in the dark, in the cold, where the conditions are wrong. It does not strain against the seed coat or fight the stillness. It simply holds, complete, intact, everything it needs to become already present and waiting inside it. This is different from giving up. The seed is not resigned to the dark. It is not defeated by the cold. It is simply patient in a way that living things, most living things, rarely manage to be. You have a version of this capacity too. The night is the right condition for stillness. Your body knows this. It has been preparing for this all evening. The drop in core temperature that begins a couple of hours before sleep. The rise in melatonin that signals the darkness to the brain, then slowing of the heart, the deepening of the breath. Your body is already beginning to do what the seed does, slowing, quietening, turning inward, protecting and preserving while the conditions for full activity are absent. You don't have to help it. You don't have to do anything. Just hold, like the seed holds, quietly, patiently, without effort. Everything you need to be tomorrow is already inside you. The embryo of tomorrow's self, complete and waiting. The morning will come. The warmth and light will come. And you will germinate. But not now. Now is a time for the seed's kind of rest. Dark and still and patient. Safe inside the coat. Waiting. And that is where we will leave it tonight. You came here to rest, and I hope that is exactly what you are doing right now, or close to it, somewhere in that warm, quiet place between knowing and not knowing, between the story and the sleep. That is the whole point of this. If you made it all the way to the end, or if you are only hearing this now, coming back from somewhere deeper. Thank you for being here. It means something that you chose this for your night. There will be another story when you are ready for it. Until then, stay exactly where you are. Let your breathing do what it knows how to do. And sleep well. This is Eyes Closed. Good night.